Okay, so how are you going to fund this? How much does a research degree in the UK cost, do you think? £14,000 a year? It's probably about true. I should say they range. Maybe the cheapest you'll find would be something like £8,000 up to about 16, 18 maybe, depending on the university, depending on the type of department and the facilities they have. I'd say the average is probably a little bit lower than that, maybe about £12,000. So just under the amount it would cost to study a full-time postgraduate taught degree for 1 year. And that's how much it costs per year, by the way. So how are you going to fund that? It's an awful lot of money for 3 years, or 3 or 4 years. So if you're thinking about applying, you should also be thinking about funding, because often they go hand in hand, and often some of the deadlines are quite soon, rather than later in the research cycle, in the application cycle. Your university will have information about their own funding and about external funding. So the university that you're particularly interested in will usually have funds set up to help students, and we certainly do. And a lot of the big research universities have a significant amount of money now to give to PhD students. Often the application for your funding is separate, but you need to submit them at the same time. Yeah. If you do get made an offer for funding, grab it with both hands, because you can always say no later. And if you don't get a place later, you can always let go. But the more funding that you can accumulate through different sources, the better. But if you get offered any funding, unless there's any severe conditions to it, just say yes and take it, because it might lead on to other sources later. I don't know much about Brazilian funding organisations, I'm afraid. I've only been working on Brazil for a year, and this is my first visit here. So I haven't met with any of them yet, but our university does deal with some of them and has got research projects running through some of the funding organisations in Brazil. So if you visit these websites and see what type of projects there are, see if you can link that with the university of choice. Contact the organisation and say, I'm interested in this university in the UK. They're running this research project. This is my research proposal. Would there be funding available for that? And they can often make things happen if there's something of particular interest to the Brazilian government, for example, that the UK can help with, then of course they're going to be interested. And also there's the possibility of loans, but I mean that's a completely different road. And if you're short of some money, or if you need to increase a certain amount of money to be able to get a visa, for example, that you can pay back within reasonable terms, then and a loan is your only option, then of course look into those. And university scholarships. As I've said, a lot of the very research-intensive universities will have scholarships available for research more and more. We certainly think now you've paid for your undergraduate, you've paid for your postgraduate, you want to do research, you're a good research student, you want to come to a very good research university, let's try and help you as much as possible, because that helps us. So now we've got a lot of money put aside for research students, and I think a lot of the big universities have. Okay, we're gonna ignore that. Okay, so how does it work in the UK when you submit an application? All applications are separate for postgraduate research degrees, and you submit your application, and then the university will send you a notification that your application has been received. That's usually automated from a computer saying, thanks very much for submitting your application. We will take a look at it over the next 5 months or whatever. But no, they'll say thank you for your application. And then there can be a lengthy process after that, depending on the time of year that you apply. Most admissions offices in the UK are central within a university, and most of the postgraduate admissions offices deal with PhD applications and postgraduate taught. Now, at my university, we receive about 13 or 14 applications for every place on a postgraduate taught program. Thousands of applications. I think we get 4,000 applications for our finance program alone. So all of those are being processed alongside your PhD program. So sometimes it can take a few weeks, if not a couple of months, to actually get an answer to your application. So don't be dismayed if you haven't heard anything in a week or two. If you are concerned after a month, of course, you can get in touch with the university and they'll have a progress report on your application, where the stage is. But generally what happens is, it comes to the university, it will go to a central office, it'll go out to the department, the relevant department, to a departmental secretary, and then on to the supervisor, who will make a decision on your application and say, yes, I can take on this student, yes, I'm interested in what they're doing. They might contact you and say, you know, this is a research proposal that I'm really interested in, but I want to change this area, and I don't think what you've written here is quite right. In my experience, maybe we could do it this way. And so there'll just be a bit of negotiation on the details of your proposal. But usually you'll get an answer from the university within 6 to 8 weeks, realistically. I'm afraid we're a little bit slow on that in the UK. And the decision that you'll get will either be a rejection, straight out, we don't want you, or it'll be a conditional offer, or it'll be an unconditional offer. A conditional offer means that something's missing, that we need to receive an English language certificate, for example. So everything else is fine, but we can't accept you until we have that certificate. Or you're missing one of your transcripts, and we need to see that. We still really want you, but we just haven't got all of the information that we need to make that offer unconditional. An unconditional offer just means that everything's been submitted, it's absolutely fine, and we'll take you. Okay, so you've received a conditional offer. What should you do? Accept the offer. You can always turn it down later. And then when you've met the conditions, submit those. And they could be certificates or references. And make sure you get those in as soon as possible. An unconditional offer, accept the offer if you want it as soon as possible, because the chances are we've made lots of offers or a few offers for each place. And if you don't accept it and somebody else does and they get in before you, then you can often lose your place. But usually if we've made you an unconditional offer and you accept it, you will get it. Or a rejection. You can't resend the same application if you get a rejection, but of course you can amend it, send in a different research proposal and reapply for using a different application. Okay. Visas are another obstacle for international students. Everything's changed over the past 2 years. The points-based system in the UK has been implemented. It's actually much, much fairer. It's less open to entry clearance officers making their own opinions about an application. You have to meet criteria, and if you meet them, you'll get a visa. And the two criteria are that you need to be accepted by a highly trusted sponsor, which is a university in the UK, and you need to have the money to come to the UK. And that can either be through your own personal wealth or through sponsorship and funding bodies. And if those sponsorship and funding bodies provide evidence that they're going to give you the cash, then you get your visa. So there's only two things, and it's a points-based system that asks for 40 points, but 30 of the points come from your sponsor saying, yes, we'll have you, and 10 points come from finance, and that's it. So it's actually just 2 points that you need to tick off. But it can seem quite daunting and quite complicated, but it's not actually that difficult. It can, again, take some time. You need to have everything in place. You need to have that offer. You need to have accepted that offer. And we need to have sent you something called a certificate of acceptance of studies before you can even apply for a visa. So all of that needs to be out of the way before you can actually get your visa. All the universities in the UK will now have loads of information on this because we've all been incredibly stressed out about it and worked very hard on it over the past 2 years. And all of that information is now on the website for you to access. Okay, so for studies in the UK, these are some of the websites. Might be useful to take them down if you don't know about them already. About studying in the UK, of course, there's the British Council here. Education UK is the branch of the British Council that highlights the benefits of UK education. There's an international student website. NARIC talks about qualifications equivalencies if you're worried about those.